Karen demanded I dismantle my flagpole. She didn't expect 2,000 veterans at my gate. Have you ever stood your ground for something you believed in, only to face someone determined to tear it down? In a quiet suburban neighborhood in Virginia, retired Marine Corps veteran Tom Harper faced just that when his new neighbor, Karen Whitmore, stormed onto his property with a demand that would spark a firestorm. It wasn't just about a flagpole in his front yard, it was about what it stood for, and the battle that followed would become a legend in the community. Tom had lived in his modest two-story home for over a decade, a place where he raised his two daughters and built a life after 20 years of service. The flagpole, a simple steel structure, stood proudly in his front yard, flying the American flag alongside the Marine Corps emblem. It was more than decoration. It was a tribute to his brothers in arms, to the sacrifices made, and to the values he held dear. Every morning, Tom raised the flags with care, a ritual that grounded him. But when Karen moved in next door, that ritual became her obsession. Karen, a mid-level corporate manager with a knack for control, took one look at Tom's flagpole and decided it was an eyesore. "It's too tall, too gaudy," she complained at the neighborhood HOA meeting, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "It lowers property values." The HOA, a small group of mostly agreeable neighbors, dismissed her concerns. Tom's flagpole met every regulation. But Karen wasn't one to back down. She marched to Tom's doorstep one crisp October morning, her clipboard in hand like a weapon, and demanded he dismantle the flagpole immediately. "This is a peaceful neighborhood, not a military base," she snapped, ignoring the fact that Tom's flagpole had stood for years without complaint. Tom, a man of few words but unyielding principle, stood calmly on his porch. "Ma'am, this flagpole honors the men and women who served this country. It's staying." Karen's face reddened, and she stormed off, vowing to escalate things. What she didn't know was that her crusade was about to collide with a force far bigger than her clipboard. Karen's next move was a petition, circulated with the fervor of a political campaign. She knocked on doors, sent emails, and posted in the neighborhood's online forum, claiming the flagpole was a visual nuisance and a violation of community standards. She even called the city, hoping to find a zoning violation. But Tom's flagpole was grandfathered in under old regulations, and her complaints fell flat. Undeterred, Karen took to social media, blasting Tom as an arrogant veteran who cared more about his militaristic display than the neighborhood's aesthetic. She didn't expect her post to catch the eye of someone else entirely: Jake, a young veteran who worked at the local VFW post and followed the neighborhood forum out of curiosity. Jake, who'd served 2 tours in Afghanistan, saw Karen's post and felt a spark of anger. He'd known Tom for years, had heard his stories of Vietnam, and respected the quiet strength of a man who'd seen combat and come home to live humbly. Jake shared Karen's post in a private group chat for local veterans, adding a simple message: "This guy's one of us. His neighbor's trying to tear down his flagpole. Thoughts?" The response was immediate. Messages flooded in, veterans from all branches, young and old, outraged that someone would target a symbol of their shared sacrifice. Jake proposed a plan: a peaceful show of support at Tom's house. Word spread like wildfire through VFW posts, American Legion halls, and veteran networks across the state. Karen, meanwhile, doubled down. She filed a formal complaint with the HOA demanding a special meeting to force Tom to remove the flagpole. She hired a lawyer, who sent Tom a letter threatening legal action for nuisance and emotional distress. She even called a local news station, pitching a story about a stubborn veteran disrupting community harmony. The station declined, sensing there was more to the story, but Karen's campaign was gaining traction among a small clique of neighbors who disliked Tom's no-nonsense demeanor. She thought she had the upper hand until the morning of the HOA meeting. That Saturday, as Karen prepared her speech for the HOA, she noticed an unusual hum outside her window. Stepping onto her porch, she froze. Tom's front yard was a sea of people, hundreds of them, spilling onto the street. Men and women in veteran caps, some in wheelchairs, others with service dogs, stood shoulder to shoulder. American flags, Marine Corps banners, and signs reading, "We stand with Tom," waved in the breeze. Jake had done more than rally a few friends. He'd mobilized nearly 2,000 veterans from across Virginia, some driving hours to be there. They weren't loud or aggressive, they stood in quiet solidarity, their presence a thunderous statement. Karen's confidence cracked. She approached Tom, who stood at the edge of his property, shaking hands with a group of Vietnam vets. "What is this?" she demanded, her voice trembling. "You can't just intimidate me like this." Tom looked at her, his eyes steady. "I didn't call them, ma'am. They came because they believe in what that flagpole represents." A woman in a Navy cap stepped forward, Maria, a retired officer who'd lost her brother in Iraq. "This isn't about you, Karen," Maria said firmly. "It's about respect. For us, for our country, for what we've lost. You don't get to erase that." The HOA meeting was a disaster for Karen. The board, overwhelmed by the crowd outside, opened the floor to public comments. Veteran after veteran spoke, sharing stories of sacrifice, loss, and pride. A young Army medic recounted how Tom had mentored her after she returned from deployment, struggling with PTSD. An elderly Korean War vet, leaning on a cane, described the flag as a symbol of the friends he'd buried. Even some of Karen's supporters shifted uncomfortably, moved by the raw emotion in the room. Karen tried to argue her case, but her complaints about aesthetics sounded hollow against the weight of their words. The board unanimously voted to dismiss her complaint. Karen's campaign unraveled from there. Her social media posts were flooded with comments calling out her entitlement. Neighbors who'd signed her petition backed away, embarrassed by the backlash. The lawyer she'd hired quietly withdrew, citing unforeseen conflicts. Worst of all, Karen's own history came to light, a twist no one saw coming. A local reporter, tipped off by a veteran digging into public records, discovered Karen had been fined years ago for violating HOA rules in her previous neighborhood by installing an unapproved fence. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Karen, the self-appointed guardian of community standards, had her own record of bending the rules when it suited her. Humiliated, Karen retreated. She stopped attending HOA meetings, her social media went silent, and her "for sale" sign appeared within weeks. The neighborhood whispered about her departure, some with pity, others with relief. Tom, ever the stoic Marine, didn't gloat. He invited the veterans back for a barbecue, where they raised the flag together, laughing and sharing stories late into the night. The flagpole stood taller than ever, a quiet sentinel of resilience. In the end, Tom's stand wasn't just about a flagpole, it was about honoring the sacrifices that shaped him and so many others. Karen learned the hard way that some battles aren't worth fighting, especially when they pit personal pride against collective honor. The community grew stronger, united by a shared respect for those who serve. As for you, what do you think? Was Karen's complaint a fair concern, or did she overstep by targeting a veteran's tribute? Share your thoughts, because sometimes the smallest symbols spark the biggest conversations.